So you go through the exam and the time comes for the on-site portion to come to an end, and typically you're going to have some kind of closing meeting. How do you all prepare for and what's your view and approach toward that particular meeting?
One of the key things I want to know is have we documented all of the potential issues, and if there was any findings during the exam. During a larger federal exam, there's usually a weekly meeting where you kind of go over what was discussed with the interviewees and what are some of the outstanding issues. During a state exam, it's a more protracted, shorter exam, but I think that we need to discuss in the closing exam, get all the issues on the table and know what we see as potential finding. And one of the things that I think is essential is to identify what our remediation efforts are going to be before they're done. That's done for us. So we've already remediated an issue, and here's the evidence. You could have that prior to the exam, or as we've discussed, we've already said how we're going to remediate each of these items by the time of the closing meeting, and it really is a review of what we've already talked about.
Yeah, and one sign of a really good exam is no surprises. So by the time you get to the closing meeting, you should already know what the findings are going to be that they're going to talk about at the closing meeting. And then again, when you get the exam report, there should be no surprises there. You should have already heard about everything. So that's the ideal. It doesn't always happen that way, but you want to try to probe the examiners during that closing meeting if you haven't already done so that you are aware of what the findings are going to be.
And interestingly, you raised the idea of tracking findings, being aware of the findings. How do you, for instance, track and handle supplemental requests that occur during the examination, or potential issues that might be brought to your attention? What sort of steps are you taking to keep track of those and address them, as you said, Richard, prior to them leaving and providing that evidence? What sort of steps are you taking in that regard?
Well, this is where that kickoff meeting comes in handy, because one thing we tell the exam team is to direct all of their questions and requests for supplemental information through the enterprise compliance regulatory exam team, and to put all of their questions and requests for information in writing. That way we can track the questions, because sometimes if you have several people on site, they might be asking the same questions over and over again. So you want to make sure you've tracked those and also keep a record of your responses. And then the reason you want it to go through a single channel is because you don't want them reaching out to your business folks sort of in their own discretion. So you want to keep that channel very focused.
With a larger exam, I keep a lot of every question, actually with all exams, but with larger exams, usually there's a lot more questions. And we review with the team, like Linda, I have a licensing exam team that focuses all the regulatory exams, and we meet at the end of every day and decide what we compare notes and make sure we've captured everything. So I think that's something that we do all the way through, and even during the supplemental portion, we discuss and log each of those requests that we receive.
And so that's something that you're sharing with your team throughout the course of the exam. Okay. So you've gone through the exam, and talk about, you've gone through the closing. Hopefully there are no surprises, and what sort of post-examination expectations should people have? For instance, in terms of dealing with proposed findings, how would you suggest people think about that?
Well, a couple of things there. I mean, one thing you really want to avoid is repeat findings, because those can certainly turn into informal or formal enforcement actions if you haven't corrected those issues by the time the regulators return. But one other thing is, I'm not sure if this is a trend yet, but one examination team required us to give quarterly reports after the exam and showing them how we're addressing every finding. They wanted target dates for completion of each item, and then any explanations as to why there might have been a delay in completing those findings. And then in addition to that type of communication, We've taken, again, a similar proactive approach to reaching out to our state examiners between exams. We'll go visit their offices, we'll give them updates, and again, this is all part of that relationship building that we think is really important with the regulators. And we did this specifically when we finalized our consent order with the CFPB and the Department of Justice. We actually called the state regulators, the ones who examine us most often, just to make sure they were aware of the consent order and to answer any questions they might have. And those calls were well received, and again, we think it set us up as a company that wants to engage and have a dialogue.
So I don't have much to add there. I mean, I think that's certainly the best practice to handle it, and I think there's some great tips you could do with the on-site, but the examination doesn't end when the on-site's over. In many cases with federal examiners, it can continue after that, and then there's a constant dialogue up until the time all open findings are remediated. So it doesn't end when they leave. That's the experience I've had.
And you know, we've had a couple questions. One that's dealing with sort of preparing for exams, and I think this can also have a broader context. So it would be certainly interesting to hear. The question is, how do you use complaints to prepare for an exam? And I wonder if you could answer that, both how you use them more broadly to identify issues so they don't necessarily become issues in a particular exam, but then also how you use them specifically in the preparation for an exam.
One of the things we're doing now with complaints is, I mean, it serves a lot of purposes. It's identifying compliance concerns, and it's also customer service. We learn a lot of issues, but it is seeing where we have problems that the testing may not have found an issue, but if our customers are saying there's a problem here, then it's something that we focus on. So we've done self-examinations, we've done compliance testing of key controls. A lot of that stuff isn't showing up in the same way that complaints do, so that's really helping us focus some of our efforts that we hadn't otherwise looked at.
Yeah, and then we of course use, we do some trending analysis of our complaints and reporting of our complaints to the business units that those complaints impact so that they can make those process improvements. And then we also report them to our Board of Directors Compliance Oversight Committee, and we report, you know,